Hey everyone, my name is Kairos, and I've been supporting Zenith since the alpha, pre-releases, betas, etc., and now with the full release. And there's one thing I've noticed consistently, and that's that there's not many Blade Masters. And a lot of the time, that's because not many people seem to know how to get the most out of the class. And I honestly think that a Blade Master can be a lot more powerful and deal a lot more damage than an Essence Mage. Probably some bias in that, but that's just me. And the reason why that isn't happening is because a lot of people haven't been properly taught or shown how to use a Blade Master effectively. And that's why I came up with the 3 steps to combat as a Blade Master. Let's get started. Coming in with step 1, slow down. Contrary to what you would learn from Sword Art Online, going faster does not help in Zenith. You need to slow down and give your swords time to charge. Let me explain. So, you'll notice when you first draw your swords, they chime, and then eventually chime again, before having the full glowing effect. This is your sword's charge time. If you're hitting them before that first ping, you're going to be dealing second to no damage at all. And by that third ping, you're dealing triple damage. The difference is insane. Let me show you what I see a lot of people doing and just why hitting fast doesn't work in Zenith. As you can see, that took forever. Alright, now that you've seen that swinging fast deals very little damage, let me show you how I fight and how I let my swords charge to full between each hit. You want to start with simple left and right. So 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Well, you get the idea. That was half the time of the original fight. You let your swords charge to your full hit before engaging combat, and keep a simple 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Also, having wider strikes deals more damage. It's an on-screen tip, and it does actually work. So you want large sweeping attacks. I'll show you again. 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2. Just to throw in a quick tip here, when you see these red orbs on an enemy, they're critical points. If you aim for those areas, you'll deal more damage on impact. Now that you know how to use your swords properly in battle and as effectively as possible, that moves us on to step number 2, movement. As a Blade Master, you can't afford to stay still in battle. If you're standing still, you're taking a lot of unnecessary damage. You need to stay mobile, learn to dodge, and learn to block at the right times. Let me explain. As a Blade Master, blocking oncoming attacks with your swords drains a lot of stamina, and if you're only relying on that to get out of the way of attacks, you're going to run out of stamina, you're going to get backed into a corner, and you're not going to win the fight. You need to rely on running circles around your enemies. You have a dash ability. For the DPS Blade Master, when you dash, you get a damage buff. Dash, run, move, jump over attacks if you have to. Jump and fly out of the way and keep swinging at them, running laps, circles around them all to deal as much damage as possible. That's not to say that blocking is completely useless. Some humanoid-style enemies, especially the ones with swords, attack in fast succession, which if you're running around them, they will rotate to trace you. The best way to take them down is to block them and stagger them before they get their combo off. I'll show you what I'm talking about. When he starts swinging, he will follow you wherever you're going. And it gets really hard to get away from him. Especially if you're just trying to get out of the way and move around. And when you block, hold in your triggers, power your swords to hit the block. One more time. Hey. One more time. When they do power attacks, you need both swords to block. That is probably the most effective way to block, but it drains your stamina quite fast. In the end, you need a good combination of both effective blocking and movement in your arsenal when fighting. And the most clean-cut, simple example I can give of this is simply, I can block when they swing and use up my stamina to block his attacks, or I can simply just move out of the way and not have to worry about draining my stamina and just get out of the way when he strikes. Another tip for blocking is hold your trigger. A lot of people say you don't have to, but let's just give an example. Straight through. Straight through. Holds trigger. He gave up. That's where we're at. And finally, onto step 3, your abilities. If you don't know how to use your abilities properly, or how to even activate them, you're going to be losing out on a lot of damage and even the potential to keep yourself alive through healing. Not many people seem to know how to proc all their abilities, or even just exactly what they all do. Let me show you my godstones and how to use the abilities effectively. Alright, so the first ability we're going to cover is the most simple one. We touched on it a little bit during movement, but it's your dash ability. It's the fastest way to move around the battlefield, and it typically gives you a buff. It's pretty straightforward, gets you out of the way, gives you a buff. You can dash out of battle, you can dash into battle. Comes down to whatever you want to do. Next up, we have our cadence abilities. Cadence abilities are somewhat passive. You don't have to think about using them. The description says every 3 downwards or every 3 horizontal strikes. This isn't necessarily true. In reality, it's every 3 strikes. The first 2 strikes, the direction doesn't matter. For example, you can do 1, 2, downwards cadence, or 1, 2, horizontal cadence. 1, 2, downwards, it doesn't matter. Let me show you what I'm talking about. 1, 2, horizontal cadence. Horizontal cadence. Or 1, 2, downwards cadence. 1, 2, downwards cadence. It doesn't really matter. Something important to note is that if you're not waiting for your swords to power up, you will not trigger a cadence ability. That's why it's important to follow step 1 and wait for your swords to power up between each hit. Otherwise, you're not going to be activating the cadences. You can combine your attacks however you like. It doesn't change them. They're passive, and you don't have to think about activating them. The only thing you really have to think about is what ability you want to proc. You'll notice relying only on the cadences didn't get much damage output, and that's where your power strikes come in. Your power strikes are the heavy hitters. To activate your power strike, you simply hold in the trigger and you'll know they activate because your sword will glow and you'll hear a sound effect as well. Your power strikes, like your cadence, can either be downwards or horizontal. As you can see, the numbers get a lot bigger with your power strikes. It uses your rage, your mana, whatever your class refers to it as. It's simply just a blue bar down here. And as you upgrade your Godstones, the cost will reduce, but more on that in a later video, of course. Once again, we'll start using our downwards and horizontal heavy attacks, power attacks. So of course, once you use out of rage, you can't keep using them, but that's beside the point. Finally, we have our ultimate. Ultimate unlocks around level 20, and in my opinion, it's not really that powerful, all things considered, although it is relatively simple to activate. Both your swords, power hit, downwards at the same time, and you'll see it activate here. As you can see, dealt a ridiculous amount of damage. It simply operates on a cooldown and not your rage itself. And then you can simply just finish them off with a power attack. The ultimate's pretty straightforward. I know Essence Mages have some trouble casting theirs, but it's really easy to activate as a Blade Master. Double power, straight down. A nice little current exploit for this is if you swap out your Godstones, it refreshes the cooldown rate, but that will likely be patched pretty soon. Moving on from that, we have our weapon throw. There's only two types of the weapon throw, but that's not important for now. I'll cover that in another video. It's as simple as it sounds. You throw your weapon by releasing the grip, and it'll activate the ability. As you can see, it bounced around the floor there for a little bit, and yeah. And it has a recharge rate like everything else. Once it's recharged, you can throw your weapon again, and it'll activate typically an AoE effect. But you can still just throw your weapon normally. There's actually nothing stopping you from doing that and dealing normal damage, but it's not going to proc your ability unless your ability's charged. Pretty straightforward, nothing too advanced, and yeah. Finally, we come down to your Master Strike. Keep pulling the trigger after a power strike. See, this can be a little bit confusing, especially if you're not sure how it activates or how to know it's activated. Although, once you get the hang of it, that's when you start dealing crazy damage. For example, holding trigger, power up your sword. Downwards heavy attack, and you'll notice that your sword is now empowered. You can do this for both swords at the same time as long as you have enough rage to power them up. Once they're powered up and glowing, you just hit them again. To keep them raged, you keep holding the trigger until your next attack, and you deal ridiculous amounts of damage, and they can continue to stack. I have not let go of the trigger at all, and they keep building up. As long as you have enough rage to sustain it, because they will not proc if you do not have any rage. For example, no rage, no power up. You can see once you start adding your Master Strike into your attacks, you start to deal ridiculous damage really, really fast. Because the great thing about your Master Strike is when you hit them once with your power attack and it charges up, if you then have enough rage to hit them again, not only will it deal the damage of your Master Strike, but it will also proc your downwards or horizontal power attack. And then horizontal attack, and it charged up again. It is ridiculous damage output potential. And that's about it for my 3 steps at getting better at combat with a Blade Master class. Of course, there's multiple other things that come into effect, such as your stamina, building your stamina up as much as possible, and your Godstones and which skills and abilities you choose. I will, in a later video, go through what I use for my DPS class and the ins and outs of Godstones, But that's all for a later video, and I'll go more in depth with that later. But in the end, thank you very much for watching. I hope this was helpful to you all. This was my first tutorial after all, but hopefully first of many to come. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and please subscribe, like the video for more content like this, and yeah, let me know if it helped. Thank you very much.